Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you to Dr. Edelbrock and everybody in TC for having me here. It's really wonderful to be here. I did wake up this morning and I looked and I thought maybe there was a problem with the sky. It seems like there's stuff falling. I'm not sure what that's all about. No, it's wonderful to be here. We're trying something a little new today. We are going interactive. I figured since this was going to be an audience that has, there's going to be a webcast audience. Hi to all of you guys. That I would also try to offer up some content and some interactive nature to this. So if things go according to plan, I should have some posts that pop up shortly. If not, I'll have to do it manually. And but we'll see how all that goes. But I will be showing a couple things up here, obviously for you guys, and then I want to try to leave some time at the end to not, there's always the period at the end where you say, oh, and if there are any questions, I'm going to try to move through things quickly, and of course questions at the end are welcome, but also I think maybe try to leave some time just for simple discussion, a bit of a forum. And I'll also want to field some questions, if we have any, from people online. So if you are watching this online, you can go to my Facebook Trumpet page, Craig Morris Trumpet, which is there, and you can go check that out, and then you can comment on places as posts come up on the screen. Hopefully. This is a bit of an experiment, so we'll see what happens. I figure what better place to do this than here, right? All right. So I wanted to start today with a quiz. I'm a college professor. We're at a college. Let's start with a pop quiz. It's one of those that gets progressively harder. I think the first one, since I'm at the National Trumpet Competition, is pretty easy. What is this? Yeah, okay, a trumpet. That one's easy. We got that one down. Now, next question. What is a trumpet? A mechanical device. That's an interesting answer.
Amplifier.
What? An amplifier? What does it amplify?
Your voice / what you make the mouthpiece.
Okay, good. All good answers. So I was looking it up, and I sort of adapted the dictionaries and simplified it and clarified it a little bit, the definition on dictionary.com. And it says, it's a long section of brass tubing with a cup-shaped mouthpiece on one end and a flared bell at the other. Yes. And it also mentioned it was usually doubled over in places. But it's more than that, as these answers are already showing us. I think of this as a tool. Okay? What is it a tool for?
Expression.
What?
Expression.
Good answer. Yeah, I like that. What do you express with this tool? Wait, I missed a good answer. What was it? Yeah, frustration. Yes, we do. I'm actually getting to that. What do we express with this? Ideas. Really good answer. Musical ideas, right? Questions get a little harder now. What is music?
Anything written before 19.
Good. All right. I've got a good crowd today. It's wonderful. Right. So music is, I remember when I was in college in my analysis class with the great Stefan Koska, and we were talking about the definition of music, and it was fairly problematic. I was happy to note when I looked it up in the dictionary.com that they actually have a pretty good definition, much upgraded from what it was when I was in school, which was at least 5 years ago. So the definition of music, according to dictionary.com, is an art of sound in time that expresses ideas and emotions in significant forms through the elements of rhythm, harmony, melody, and color. Not bad. No, you might tweak it a little, add some things. I'm not sure where noise music falls in that, but you could probably, find a way to fit it in. So given what we've talked about so far, what is the complete definition of a trumpet? What I came up with last night, I just blended the two definitions, is a tool consisting of a long section of brass tubing with a cup-shaped mouthpiece at one end, flared bell at the other. It is used to express ideas and motions through sound using musical elements of melody, harmony, rhythm, and color. I started to take out harmony, and then I remembered I just now premiered a piece by, goodness now, it wasn't just now, you didn't hear it. It was a couple of months ago by Joel Puckett. The whole first movement, first 6 minutes of it is multiphonics. And so I think in addition to outlining harmony melodically, we are increasingly seeing the use of harmony in the music for the instrument. So this is what we're all here for, right? Is this instrument. We are trying to express ideas and emotions through sound using this. Now we all know this is how this thing works. We have to make a certain kind of face. You have to draw the lips together in a way that when we blow through our lips into the cup-shaped mouthpiece, through the section of tubing, out the flared bell, we get a sound, right? And we've all spent many years and frustrations working to make that happen. So when we do that, that's good, only when we start it's always right, and then like a year later, it's a little better, and it keeps getting better and better. So over a long progression of time, we get better at producing a sound on this. Okay, well that's cool. Like if I went to a playground and said, hey guys, check it out. They'd say, oh, can I try that? And then they wouldn't be able to do it, and I'd say, yeah, pretty cool, huh? However, that is not the end of the story. After all, we haven't even started talking about expressing ideas and emotions. And if we are looking at actually having a career with this crazy thing, that certainly isn't what's going to get us there, right? At least in my experience, no one's been lining up to pay me money to do that just yet. Maybe someday. So the skill we have to develop is vastly more complex and involved than that, as we all know. But I find it sometimes to be a little murky waters through a lot of my career, actually, when you're talking about trumpet technique. Because we have to use this tool, right, to eventually express ideas and emotions. But if we aren't able to control the tool well, then we're not going to make anything that's really very worthwhile, not anything that's really worth making. We're not going to be able to express very well our ideas and emotions, much less those of any composer that writes for us. So we have to spend a lot of time, as we all know, mastering this. And as I was alluding to earlier, it can be rather confusing sometimes as to what we need to really work on in order to develop and to have all the skills we need to be able to express our ideas and emotions. Over time, because we grow up and you think, oh, you should practice your Clark studies, you should practice your Art of the Arbans, but the Arbans is the Bible. Make sure to practice okay, well, the Arban is whatever, 300 and whatever pages long. There's a lot to practice in there, and it's also a place that you can spend a lot of time and not get to the things that you really need to get to. That may seem sacrilege. You may think, but the Arbans, we should all spend more time practicing. But there's a lot to this developing skill on the trumpet. And you've heard it talked about to divide it up into articulation and flexibility, and to make sure every day you triple tongue and double tongue and do single tongue and lip slurs, and you play high, play low. All these things are good, but I never found a way to organize them that I was really happy with until the last year or two. And to me, trumpet technique can now be grouped into 4 elements. And these elements are production, motion, articulation, and, in the case of our modern beast, mechanism. A Baroque trumpet or a natural trumpet is a 3-element instrument: production, motion, articulation. Let's talk about these a little more in depth. Production. Production is the ability to make a beautiful, warm, resonant sound, varying in color. Remember, color was part of it. I love that they included color in the definition, actually. A warm, beautiful sound throughout the entire range of the instrument, whatever the music calls for. We have to be able to play notes low and high, everything in between. We have to be able to play them soft and loud. And so we have to develop these things, and that's just playing one note. So I have to be able to play all the notes we know, right? And I have to be able to do soft and loud, everything in between. So that's production, the basic idea of making a sound. You guys will notice me taking my slide out to empty water. The reason is my whole spit valve assembly blew off of the end of my horn. The soldering came off, and so Fred Powell was nice enough to lend me a cork so I can still play this trumpet for today. We're surviving here. We're surviving. Okay, so that's production, making a beautiful sound in all ranges and in all dynamic levels across the entire dynamic spectrum. Motion is being able to connect those elements, to connect those notes together. So being able to move from one note to another, fast or slow, soft or loud, high, low, all these things, being able to connect notes together. Okay? Articulation is simply, if I may say simply, the use of the tongue to get a percussive style to your music, to create rhythm inside your sound, essentially. Rhythm and, like I said, a percussive effect. So it stylizes our music. And then mechanism, articulation will include, of course, multiple tonguing and single tonguing. It would include flutter tonguing, as well as everything else I already said. Multiple tonguing is not any different than single tonguing in my money. It is just an extension of the single tongue. So it's just simply being able to articulate at any speed required. We have to practice a lot to achieve that, but there should be no difference at all between multiple and single tongue as far as what comes out of the horn. Now, last thing is a mechanism, and that's pretty simple. We have these valves, we all know how they work, and we put them, we use them to connect together all of our open notes, and that lets us have full chromaticism and enables us to play a huge amount more music. Okay, now why am I talking to you about that today, these 4 elements? The reason I'm mentioning this is, in my experience, many players spend a lot of time practicing elements 3 and 4, and sometimes 2, and not very much time 1. Okay, so let's go over those. The students spend a lot of time playing, articulating and using the mechanism, like most of the Arbon's book, but they don't spend a lot of time focused on motion and production. And you may hear somebody say, sound is everything. You've got to work on your sound. And that's right. And that's production, and that's why we have to all spend an enormous amount of time working on production. After all, the only reason to ever use a trumpet to do anything in music is because of its sound. I think literally just about every other instrument is easier to play things on. So if you want fast notes, there's a better instrument for that. If you want high notes, there's a better instrument for that. Low notes, same thing. Whatever you're talking about, the only reason to use the trumpet is because it's beautiful. And it's powerful. It's all because of the sound, right? And yet I feel like that in our community, there's not, I mean, there are many examples contrary to this, but as a whole, there's not enough focus put on practicing production. So let's put this into some of the terms that you'll be more familiar with. Production exercises. Who might offer up, what do you think a production exercise would be? Yeah.
Long tones.
That's it. Yes, absolutely. Bravo. Yeah, long tones is the mothership of production exercises, of course. But I think too often, people do long tones only on easy notes. So you say practice long tones, and the only long tone practice that gets done in a day is Now, don't get me wrong, this is actually how I start my day. There's value in this. But if that's the only long tones that you play, then you're not really digging into production very much. For one thing, nothing I played is loud. It's also not terribly soft, so I didn't cover the dynamic spectrum at all. And if I work my way down on that exercise, down to the bottom of the instrument, I've covered just a small part of the range. So we have to make sure when we're practicing production that we take it up into the staff, into the upper register to an extent. Now, of course, as you go higher, this becomes a place where you're much more prone to injuring yourself, wearing yourself out. So you always have to be smart, listen to your body, and only go as high and as long as you can comfortably go. That, however, is not the reason to never do it. Like, oh, well, I might injure myself, so I'm only going to play long tones on G. Well, no, then, we should at least try A flat. Let's check that out. It's probably not too much of a step. And then, you know what? If you did A flat this week, then you can probably handle A next week, and so on. And up you go. And, everybody in this room has been playing trumpet for many years. If you were constantly working on this, you would be able to play long tones up quite high. And if you think about music written in the Baroque era, and of course much contemporary music, it's extensive long passages in the upper register. Long tones in the upper register are not to be avoided. They are to be treated very carefully. Okay? Very important. But if you don't ever work on production across the whole range, how do you expect to have control over it? Right? You won't. Okay. Other production exercises, lip bends, mouthpiece buzzing, lead pipe buzzing, which I do, breath exercises, breathing exercises. All of these would fall into the category of production. Also, something I've done a lot in recent years, Caruso exercises, even though there are some motion, like the 6 notes exercise. Prime example of production exercise. Now, some of these definitions get a little hazy. You might say, well, but the Caruso exercises move. Yes, but they primarily benefit your production. They aren't primarily, especially the 6 notes and the seconds, they're not primarily about connection, they're primarily about production. But almost any kind of ripple, these are like the 4 elements, just like the 4 elements of the earth, right? So there's always some mixture. So if you take page 59 in the Arbenz book, bum, 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 bum. Okay, well, what do we have there? Well, anytime we play a note, we're working on production to some extent. So we have production, but it's not a focus. We have motion up the scale. We have articulation, of course, and mechanism. So all 4 elements are present. But unless you are really focused on elements 1 and 2, on production and motion, you won't get what you need out of those in that exercise, and you'll concentrate on 3 and 4, articulation and and the mechanism. And that's why so many students play when I hear them. And especially, of course, young players. And then you work on, okay, but now listen to the sound. That's the production side. That's a fine way to practice and to make sure you're listening for the right kind of sound in that exercise. But if you have production issues, you have to focus on the production itself. Find exercises that are geared to improving production. This is even for people with good sounds, right? Just because maybe there's a certain part of your production that that needs work. You're better in the upper register than the low, or the other way around. Or soft, you're better at soft than loud, or the other way around. So you have to find ways to address those weaknesses in your production. Okay? Motion. Connecting notes together. That's what music is all about. You can't have a musical expression unless you are connecting notes together. That's where the ideas and emotions come from. So we have to be really good at connecting notes together. And we have this crazy mechanism with, that literally cuts off the tube that you're blowing in every time you push it down. We've got that to navigate. We've got our flow. We've got all kinds of things that we all know and love, kind of, that get in our way when we're trying to connect notes together effectively. So we have to spend a lot of time working on making a nice sound in all registers and all dynamic levels, but then connecting these together. And those notes can be tongued or slurred, high or low. The gaps can be fast or slow, or it can also be wide or narrow. So motion exercise might be or I won't go on for now just to save time, but you get the idea, right? And anything you come up with. There are so many motion exercises. To me, kind of between the first elements comes stamp. Another thing I've spent a lot of time in recent years working on and teaching. Stamp is production, but it's more motion-based than, say, Caruso. So I really tend to think of stamp as motion-based exercises and a motion-based method. But production is key to there, and working on that will enhance your production as well. This, to me, is where most of our practice should be for pretty much everybody. Elements 1 and 2. Because relatively speaking, the others are simple. If you have problems with your articulation, I bet 95% of the people that say, yeah, but I need to work on my articulation, I bet you need to work on your production. I bet it's response. I bet your ability to go, two, is fine. I bet you can do that just fine. What gets wrong is something with the air or something with the vibration when the tongue is introduced. So yes, it's a third element issue, but it is very clearly more an issue with production than it is the actual use of the tongue. Compared to the first two things, with this crazy thing, the third element is pretty simple. Use the tongue to create a percussive style in your sound. Okay, yeah, compared to playing a high C, I'll take it. Okay, then the fourth also, while at first seeming complex, a mechanism. How many people, you've all been listening to ensembles and soloists. These are some of the best players in the country in your age range, right? And how many people hear people just totally fall apart with their fingers? It's not very often, is it? And if you talk about the orchestra audition world, almost never does someone get cut because their fingers were sloppy. Why do people get cut in an audition environment?
The musical ideas didn't match the conductors?
Not usually cut. Maybe at the end of the day, there it comes in.
I'm just repeating what I've been told by numerous people. First reason, they don't have a good sound or it's not good on every note. Second reason is that their rhythm is not perfect.
Those are good answers. And the first one is as much common as anything else. So it comes back to first element. When I was in Chicago and production, right? When I was in Chicago, we auditioned for the fourth trumpet position, the one that Taga now holds. And during that process, we heard 156 people. And we had many great players come through there. You find out afterwards. I find out people I know, and I know are fantastic players and highly respected, come to the audition and played and then not advanced. And the thing we kept hearing behind the screen, the third or fourth excerpt we asked for was the second trumpet part to Scheherazade. And it's a fourth trumpet job, right? And we typically, very often, we'd hear 3 good excerpts where a lot of nice things, and then the low tonguing on Scheherazade would be really not very good. And it was, well, you know, you're on the committee, you're like, well, how can I hire a fourth trumpet player in the Chicago Symphony that can't tongue low? That it isn't showing that today. Now, maybe they can under another circumstance. That's a different question. But you've got to be able to put that product out there. That's a basic production issue, right? But it's not just production. It's production and articulation. And this particular production is low register, right? And fairly loud, but also having controlled dynamics. So that's got to be there, and then you've got to be able to do it tongued. It's a basic skill. And that's something I have to work on a lot. So I understand struggling with that. But I also won 2 fourth trumpet jobs in Chicago and Boston, and from a guy who struggles with that. And how did I do that? Practice. You know, I worked a lot on those skills in preparing for those auditions, and made them sound okay. And so I was able to have those achievements. So there's nothing that we're talking about here that is rocket science, but I've just felt like I wanted to talk about this with you guys here today because I'm hoping that it brings maybe some clarity to your practice. So when you're thinking about your practice day, and instead of, you know, like, oh, I need to do my Clarks and my Schlossberg and my this and that, and then think about ordering it with these elements in mind, and prioritize. Make sure you are spending really focused time on the first 2 elements, production and motion. If you're doing that, the other 2 will not be a problem. If you find some weaknesses, fine, do some Nagel speed studies. Ben spend tons of time in the Arbens book and working on all of the great articulation studies there, or any Chris Gecker's articulation book, or the Goldman practical studies. There's so many wonderful resources for this. But we have to make sure we give the attention needed by the first 2 elements. And I think if everybody has that in their mind, that they're going to cover some of all the elements in a focused manner every day, but especially carving out time through many great exercises, we've talked about some here, for the first 2 elements, then it will be helpful and hopefully clarify your day. Okay? Excuse me, I get some water. If I'm getting dry, you must be getting tired of listening to me. Okay. Well, that is not the end of the master class. I didn't just come here to talk to you about trumpet technique. There are many great master classes on trumpet technique, and we don't really need one more. So remember, the first thing that we said is we have this tool to express ideas and emotions. And we left that to talk about how to use the tool, right? So we've had our instruction manual, and that's how we use the tool. Those are the things we need to work on to get all of our abilities working in the way we want, and then maintain them, which is also demanding. But then we need to translate this into an expression. This skill, we need to translate it into an expression of ideas and emotions. Now, I'm a classical musician. I played a little jazz here and there, but I'm certainly not a jazz musician. But in the classical world, the classical music is a composed and interpreted art form. So it's pretty cool in this way. Actually, really different than any other. I mean, not any other, but than most genres, in that you've got composers throughout the history of music that have written, and still doing it today, of course, that write things down on a paper. They get a thought in their mind and an expression, a way they want to express an emotion or an idea, and they translate that in their head. They hear this as a sound, and then they translate that on the paper into this great notation system we have, complete with dynamics and all kinds of markings. And it's up to us to then take that paper, whether it's taking it from someone you know, like the Joel Puckett Concerto I just premiered, or whether it's taking something that's 300 years old, like a early Baroque concerto or something, and playing that. And you take this piece of music, and we see the symbols, and we then interpret those symbols and turn them into an expression of ideas and emotions through sound, right? This is also incredibly important because I think a lot of people get knocked off track with the interpretive side of that, especially trumpet players can have struggles with this because the trumpet is a difficult instrument and there's a lot to do just to make it work. And it's real easy to get focused on the skills, all the things I just talked about, and not put enough focus into the actual music that's being made. Also, we fall into a very natural trap. Another question / definition. This is falling apart. What is this I'm holding? Not the piece name, but what would you call this? Any piece. Could just as a secret code. I like that answer. So, what? Music. Yeah, and that's an answer I hear a lot, and it's the answer I wanted to hear. Thank you. It's not, however, actually music, because music, as we just saw, is although I have to confess, on the dictionary.com definition, it's like number 6 down there. So, as a printed form or something of music. But this is sheet music. Music is what I make with that crazy tool. So that's an expression in sound of ideas and emotions, right? This is like a map. It's like a map to music. But it's no more music than a map of Florida is Florida, or a map of that river has snow by it. So what we have to figure out is use this we have to find a way to get music out of this. So we have to look at these symbols, and we have to then say, right, got it. So those are the notes and rhythms I'm supposed to play. But what does this mean? What are the ideas and emotions inside this? How do I express them? Am I expressing them? What I see so many times with my students is what I've come to call the bane of instruction. Instruction, and we get it from everywhere. But the first place we get it, and these are terrible examples of it because there's almost no instruction in either of these examples on purpose. But the first instruction comes on the sheet music itself, right? Like right at the top, 84. That's my instruction. So I should get my metronome out, 84, forte. Okay, so I'm playing loud, okay, and then here's my notes and rhythms. Here's all my instructions. Then I play it for my teacher, and then he or she says, no, you should play that longer. Like, okay, got it, longer. And you have all these instructions that you're doing. But the problem is often when we are dealing with these instructions, we aren't ever expressing anything. We're just following instructions. And you can always hear that. So let's delve into this a little bit. Let's see what happens if I refresh that page, if my post. Technology timeout here. Yeah, okay. I have to say, this is phenomenally awkward. I thought the trumpet was hard. Getting there. Okay, sorry. Whew. Okay, that's the last time I'm going to do that. Never quite used a computer in that fashion before. Okay, so let's pull up some things. And for those of you watching, and actually if it's easier for you guys, I've got, for anybody that has a smartphone, I think, if you want to see, I'm going to pull up some sheet music examples. But if you want to go to my Facebook page, there should be some links there. Yeah, I think we can see them. Of course, now I get this pop-up window that says, do you want my site to be more visible? Yes, please, get out of the way. I want it to be more visible by not having that box. All right, so you'll see on that page there are some musical examples. So if it's easier for you to look on your device at this music, it's fine, whatever is comfortable for you. Certainly for the people online, I thought it'd be good to pop up. You could just pop up a separate screen with these links or files on it. Tomorrow, for anybody know whose birthday is tomorrow? Yeah, Bach's birthday tomorrow. I have a couple of things. One of the things I play every now and then is the flute partita in A minor. It works great on the trumpet, by the way, and I'll play some of it today. What we see over here, sorry, I'll have to, yeah, there we go, okay. Yeah, we're making some progress. Okay, on the right here is, sorry, it's probably good enough, but there we go. It's a little, better. This is the first page, the manuscript facsimile from the flute partita, originally in A minor. Doesn't work so well in A minor on trumpet. A little high. The flute partita, as you can see, I mean, this is the first movement, Allemande, and here are Bach's instructions. This is what the paper looks like, right? These are his instructions. There's not much there except, well, there's a lot of notes, but they're not, not a whole lot else there, is there? Now, if you want to see a little more clearly, come over here. We'll go to the top. This is what it actually, that's what the notes actually are. So if you wanted to see what the notes actually are, that's what they look like. And as you see here, there's not much in the way of instruction. So a trumpet student might take this. Wow, it's confusing. For a long time, I played this piece, worked on this piece from a recorder arrangement that I found. And only recently I started working on it on the actual Urtext. But of course, when I was packing to come here, I couldn't find my Urtext copy. We just moved studios at the University of Miami. Very exciting for us. New studio building. A wonderful new space, but some of my stuff is still in boxes. So not everything is out where I want it. So I'll play just a little of the opening of the Allemande as a student might play it, or as someone who's simply going to follow the instructions on the page. Okay. No one's clapping. I didn't like it either. That certainly isn't what Bach had in mind, right? I mean, there's nothing going on. It's just 16th note after 16th note, and there's nothing happening. And there aren't any instructions. So what do? We have to think about what is being said. What are the ideas and emotions that Bach might be expressing here? And what ideas and emotions can we express with this music? Characters, I call them a lot. What characters are there in this music? Let me try it again. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Fred Powell. Otherwise, you wouldn't be hearing any of this. Okay. Oh, you liked it. Thank you, thank you. I promise I wasn't fishing for applause with my last comment. Yeah, it's a whole different game, right? And when I play that, there is a lot going on. There's a lot of nuance. I'm always looking for the next expression, the next character, the next color change. And to me, that is why I've spent all this time learning this crazy thing, is so that I can find those and I can express those, because that's what music is. And that's why I got into this in the first place. So that's all fine and good. But the question is, okay, well, how do we do this? Because if I played that for somebody, they might say, oh, it's too fast, or it's too slow. Try it this way, try it that way. And those are all really good ideas. Well, no, not necessarily. Some of them might be good ideas. Depends who's telling me, I guess. But as a student, you might say, well, that's great, but what do I do to get there? This is one of the hardest things to teach. And all I can do is tell you once what I've worked with my students some, and it's also what the process I've gone through over the years. One, this is something you'll develop your whole life. It takes a lot of listening to music, a lot of playing to music, playing music, but especially listening to great musicians and hearing it and listening to them with a score. We hear a lot, go listen to violinists and cellists and singers. That's great. Go listen to them. Bring a score. Because what you're doing, if you don't take a score, then you're missing half the reason you go in the first place. Because what you're studying is interpretation. And if you don't see what it is they are interpreting, well, then you're just hearing pretty sounds. And it becomes much harder for you to translate that in your own work. So that when you see the same notation that they're seeing, you didn't realize that, oh my God, Jesse Norman took so much time and there's not even a retard marked there. And you don't realize that unless you see, it's like, oh, this thing was marked Allegro, but they were like 90. I didn't know you could play Allegro at 90. Well, it depends. So you have to know what's on the page so that you can really educate yourself. The other thing is you have to experiment. And you have to find ways, you have to look for these characters in the sound and the way you play. And you always have to be experimenting. Let me just check time here. Yeah, it goes by so fast. Since we're celebrating Bach, no, you know what? I'm going to go on. I don't know if I've been in recent years playing. I discovered these 13 melodies by Philip Glass. And they are, when I first got the music, here, I'll pull up the pieces I made. Let's start with this one. Yeah. Flugelhorn, down a fourth, that's how you play this. And actually, that's I started to erase that marking, but that marking is, I think, actually indicates part of the process. So I got this, and when you look at that, you realize, wow, there's also not much here different than what Bach wrote, right? I do have a tempo marking, and I've got piano. I don't think Bach even included that in the manuscript. But there's very little happening here. So if I get to be the studious modern day student, in my day we didn't have our metronomes in our pockets, unless you had big pockets.
Greg, we do have 2 questions on your Facebook.
Ah, awesome. I will get to those right after this. Thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate it. So if we take this and we establish it at 72 as marked, and we play this piano. We get something like this, if I'm just following instructions. I'm doing a lot of good things here. I'm blowing through the sound. I'm projecting all the way to the things your teachers tell you all the time. Make sure to connect, pop your valves, do all these things. I'm doing a lot of good stuff here, but I hate it. It sounds terrible. So when I first played this, though, I had to first figure out what key I wanted to put it in on flugelhorn. Sorry, I don't have flugel here today. But then I thought about, okay, so I might play it like this at first. What's 72? And then instantly I start listening for the character, for what's being said here. And I think it's, and then you just have to experiment. So you've done your fundamentals, you've covered your 4 elements, and you've done all your homework to make your tool work well, your trumpet work well. Now it's time to put yourself in a room and experiment with making ideas, expressing ideas and emotions through sound, taking a written document and trying to convert that into sound. And so as I went through this, I would kind of listen for what the character is, and right away I hear this, and to me, it's this, it's got this sort of sentimental, sad quality to it. And so I'm thinking right away, okay, I want to try to capture that. Another thing I notice is that, wow, we've got a lot of long notes. Long notes, and there's a reason I picked this actually, long notes are the #1 opportunity for expression in music. They are also the single most underused aspect. So often people are thinking about line as in how the line shapes from one moving note to another, and they forget all about what they do, what you can do with the sustained notes. That's where so much of the shape happens. That's also the place that you can use one of the great tools, and that's vibrato. And you can use vibrato. I'm going quickly now because I want to make sure we get to questions and some discussion. Use vibrato to, not like a machine, not just a vibration of sound, but an extension of the expression of the line. So if I'm playing a long note and I want it to go a certain direction, I will change the character and speed of the vibrato in order to reflect that. So there's a couple of ideas. And so eventually what I come up with is something like this. Okay? Totally different kind of game. Thank you. And you notice there's a couple of things. One, this melody comes back, right? In bar 5, the beginning comes back. You notice I sped it up a little bit. Because if I played it exactly like the same, as exactly like the opening, it would be boring. I want to express a new idea. I want the ideas to evolve. Remember, this is an expression in time of sound. Sound in time. So things need to be constantly evolving and morphing and changing. And then if I go in just a little bit, we have a new, it's like the sun comes out. And suddenly we've got a whole different character, right? So you come at this an intimate space in the beginning, morphing and then blossoming. And this is what you all need to look for. And you can do it just as well as I can. Who here has listened to a piece of music and cried? Then you can do it too. If you feel and experience emotion when you listen to music, then you can then express emotion and feeling and ideas to others by performing it. But you have to work on it. Just like you work on your long tones and your articulation and your flexibility, you have to practice it. And you have to keep digging, and you have to think, is that really all of the ideas that are here? One of my favorite compliments is I play something for a composer and they say something to the effect of, wow, I never really heard that in that music. Favorite compliment, because then I'm doing my job. I'm finding everything that's there, even if it wasn't up front intended. I'm finding something to say, and that's what makes this art form so fantastic. It's collaborative. We collaborate with people that are living, like Philip Glass, and people that are unfortunately long gone, like Bach. But we still have them, and we're still collaborating with them. And if I collaborate with them, it's different than if each one of you collaborate with them. Everyone has their own special collaboration with every composer that's ever written music across the history of time. That's pretty cool. And we've chosen to buzz our lips into a cup-shaped mouthpiece and a long section of tubing with a flared bell end to express these ideas. All right, that's it for that. So thank you for listening to my long diatribe. Thank you. All right, so I've had to ignore our poor online audience here for a while. Sorry, guys. We have some questions, I understand. And now we're back to me operating the computer, the worst part of the master class. All right, where's my, Oh, by the way, I mentioned the Joel Puckett Concerto. I just happened to see this. That's a SoundCloud link to it. If you want to hear some wacky multiphonics, you can go and listen to the premiere right there. Questions, where are you? Yeah. Right there? Oh, click on up here. Oh, yeah, probably. Oh, refresh again. Maybe I'll be better at it this time. Oh, that's a good tip. Oh, boy, that's so close. Okay, Command R. Excellent. You can't imagine how awkward that is. Okay. Andy Harms. Hi, Andy. Former student of mine. Are you here, Andy, somewhere? But you don't have to ask a question online. All right. Well, yeah, you think? Review? Or I mean, refresh? Oh, thank you. Ah. Thank you. Oh. Okay. What do you think is the most common problem facing classical music in the U.S. right now, and what can we do to help? Okay, that's a good question, Andy. You have to pick one. I wonder if you could share some more production exercises you use and recommend. Do you incorporate breath attacks at all? All right, let's take that first. It's really, it's simple. Certainly much more simple than the first one. So I like the question, it's great. Yes, breath attacks all the time, or as Stamp describes them, poo attacks. That's how I start every day. With simple, I'll do it, use the word simple. Yeah, like there's anything simple about any of this. I guess simple, just not easy. That really makes me nervous. I just, okay, should have brought a stand. So, I'll start doing some free buzzing. And then I'll do on the mouthpiece. I'll do the stamp, just like at the beginning of the stamp book. So, to do it in a hurried version. Then I do the same thing here. And I'm always drawing the lips around the airstream to create this poo attack. And that's the first thing I do in the day is try to find that. And so on. And then after I'm done with the buzzing, which takes me like 5 minutes, I'll do long tones like I started playing before, the G, F sharp G, or I'll do some lip bends. All of them I do with breath attacks or poo attacks. And the reason is I don't want the tongue to be the primary instigator of sound. I don't want the tongue to be the thing that sort of spurs things into action. I want to make sure I am delivering the air and vibration and coordinating that I don't need the tongue to make the sound. I only use the tongue to create the percussive effect. Okay? And this goes back to what I said earlier about if you have articulation issues, it may start with production. As far as other exercises, I think I even made a list here. I'm trying to remember oh yeah, here we go. I gotta come back. Finally, back on my own screen. Yeah, long tones, initial attacks. Who here knows I know my students will raise their hands. The book by Mary Franquin. Yeah, not many hands. It's a great book. Who here knows the Ionesco legend? Yeah, man, many more people know that. What's at the top of the Ionesco legend? Who's it dedicated to? Yes, sure is, Mary Franquin. Who was Mary Franquin? Logan.
You told me this.
Yeah.
Teacher of the Grass Conservatory.
Yes, right around the turn of the 20th century. And he wrote an extensive method. Not many people of note in our community have really studied this method. There was a guy named Maurice Andre that grew up playing it, and a guy named Håkan Hardenberger, I think, who recommended it to me. So it's a method that should be used a lot more. It contains a lot of the same kind of things the Arbens book does, similar kind of organization. The number one difference is there are huge amounts of focus on production exercises. Sans filet, he described, which are in French, as I understand it, spinning sounds. So you do these soft, loud, soft, long tone exercises. And also emissions. And this is exercise. It's the first exercise in the book, and it keeps coming back throughout in every part of the book with increasing difficulty. Yeah. Now the bad news. You can it's actually readily available, and I think the price has dropped. I had to pay $150 for my copy. So it's one of my missions in life when I get more time, which I hope this happens sometime, to try to get the price, find some way to get the price of that book down, because it's ridiculous that you can get, say, an Arbens book for so much cheaper, which is essentially the same scope. I think it's come down some, but it's not hard to find. Sheet Music Plus, I think, carries it. If you just Google it, it'll come right up. I think it's even the complete conservatory method, or maybe just the complete method. And Mary's name is at the top of your copy of the Ionesco legend, of course. So if you have any trouble with the spelling, you can find it there. And so. It's a wonderful book, and the emission exercise is quite simple. And the good news is you can even replicate it on your own. But there's one that starts just a half note, half rest, and then a whole rest, and then you just work your way up chromatically, but always trying to get the perfect articulation. Starts on a low C and goes up chromatically, pianissimo. Very soft. Try to get a nice ping, a nice response to your sound. You just work your way up, and then he starts going. He goes down to the lower octave and picks up like at low G or something, and so you kind of go up in parallel, nothing magic about the exercise or the arrangement of notes. It's just, but it goes all the way up to high C. It ends on a high C, C in the staff, low C, pedal C, all pianissimo, controlled. And these are great production exercises and initial attack exercises, which I think is a huge part of production, is how to start the sound, both breath attack and coordinating the tongue in there. So, using articulation as well, so that you get the exact right strike at the right time to kick off the sound. And be really, take a block of time and dedicate it, 20 or 30 minutes a day to doing that kind of. Well, first, don't do 30 minutes. You'll drive yourself crazy. But take 20 minutes a day to dedicate yourself to that kind of exercise. But being really demanding about the quality, making sure you get exactly the right sound, the right kind of articulation, and do that before you go and extend it up into the upper register. Just to work on getting the notes in the staff and below it, just to really respond exactly the way you want in a controlled fashion. And you'll see that's another way production increases. I've also, the Caruso, I mentioned Caruso, I've been using a lot, actually thanks to my students. One of the things I love about my job is I discover and think up some things, but my students also bring stuff to me. So I had a graduate student bring me, thank you, Philippe, if you're listening, bring me Marcus Stockhausen's version of the Caruso called the Basic Caruso. And I use that quite a bit. Highly recommended. I also insist, if you're going to do it, that you find somebody who knows how to do it and play it for them. Because I mentioned injuring yourself. It's an easy thing to do wrong. His instructions are very good. So I guess try it at your own risk. Do not attempt this at home. But if done well, which essentially is just making sure you're using good common sense, playing softly and monitoring yourself and not overextending. But if done well, it can really enhance range and endurance and the quality of production. A lot of people will think of those as range and endurance exercises. To me, they are really more about compressing the range, bringing notes closer together, and they also have a huge impact on improving sound if done correctly. If you're using a lot of pressure and pushing and forcing, then you will hurt yourself. So you have to keep the pressure light and make sure that you are that you aren't overdoing it in any way. And if anything gets overly uncomfortable, stop. Remember, all these kind of exercises you can build on over years. So don't be in a hurry. Take the time to really develop it properly. Much better just to keep things in the staff and then gradually expand it than just think, oh, I'm going to go way up to such and such today. Think of this. You're on a long road. You guys are all young, so you've got time to expand anything in your playing that needs to be improved. So take the time and do it right. Don't rush ahead. And this is just one example of that. We've got your question. I don't know. I don't want to go. I know I'm going to be going to. Yeah, I'm already over. So if you need to go, I don't know. I'll stay until I get kicked out. I don't know what's happening in this room after, but I'm happy to take some time and talk. I think, Andy, your question. How did you phrase it? What do you think is the most common problem facing classical music in the U.S. right now, and what can we do to help? Yeah, maybe lack of creativity. I think we always need to be focusing on, if you're thinking of doing this for a career, and I think a lot of people are here if they're not at least considering that. They're not here if they're not at least considering that. I think if you look at the career opportunities, you see the problem as it is. There's not many jobs in orchestras. But by the way, I'm not all doom and gloom about the orchestra situation as maybe many people are. I think over the course of my career, the orchestra situation may have degraded some. But I remember really clearly in the early 90s, people talking about the orchestra audience is aging and dying, and they're all dying off. They're all in their mid-70s now, and there won't be anybody left to hear orchestra concerts in the future. Well, guess what? That was 25 years ago. So all those people are 100 now. And there's still an audience in the concert halls. So I don't think it's as dire as we can make it out to be. Also, I think the opportunity internationally is at the best that it's been in my whole career. There are more opportunities in Asia and other parts of Europe to both to find out about jobs and to win good jobs all around the world. So I think if you want to be an orchestra musician, you don't have to focus just on whatever is in the American Federation of Musicians, in the International Musician, ironically named, because you will typically only find American job vacancies in there. But if you don't know about it, probably everybody does. Musical chairs, .info. If you go there, you'll see postings from all over the world. And there's a lot of great orchestras and great jobs out there. A friend of mine, Josh McClure, who was formerly second trumpet in St. Louis, is now principal in Hong Kong. And that's more and more common. So I think there are still good opportunities in orchestras. It's still really difficult and really I started to say competitive. I think the biggest challenge, honestly, is getting to the standard required of orchestra committees these days. I think if you can do that, if you can play at the standard of required by a committee, you will win a job. So, I don't think in that regard that they're all that competitive. I think the big challenge is simply playing up to a very high standard. So you can have a career as an orchestra. And you can have a career teaching. You can do a path like I did, go through orchestras and then end up teaching and doing your own projects. Or you can go through and get a doctorate and get a job somewhere and work your way up. There's good options there. But I think it's important for all of us, myself included, that we always continue to explore ways to not just have teaching be all by itself occupation. In other words, I think teachers need to be trying to push the envelope as performers as much as possible. It's not for everybody, but for people that can and want to, I think it's important to do that. I try to think of myself as always looking to expand the marketplace. If I can go out and get some work and get the trumpet into places where it's not normally heard, then that means the next time a trumpet player contacts that presenter, that they'll say, "Oh yeah, trumpet player. We had another trumpet player before." It won't be like a what? What is it you have? Which I've heard, yeah. Sadly. So I think finding ways, to be entrepreneurial is important from a teaching position if you have interest and ability. So for students, you can get orchestra job, you can work your way through into academia, you can start a chamber group, or you could promote some kind of a solo act. You could be a soloist, but I think more and more, it's more likely people will find ways to have success as a solo artist, presenting some kind of interesting musical content as a solo performer, rather than, say, the Håkan Hardenberger route, which is fantastic. It's just, I find it difficult to play the way he does. And commissioning is a big part of that as well. If you can commission some things, then that gets some playtime and so on. But the biggest challenge is getting this music to be relevant. We live in an age where I think that cultural relevance, the pop industry is sort of overwhelming us in so many ways. And we need to find a way for us to be able to express these ideas and emotions through sound in places where people are actually open to hearing them and are willing to pay for it. Because you want to have a career, right? You're not just doing this for fun. It is enjoyable, but we're trying to have careers and be functioning artists. So we need people to be willing to listen and learn and absorb. So I think that's the biggest challenge. And I think creativity is the thing that we need in many ways. Creativity in what you program, in where you play, in what your online presence is, and finding ways to package whatever you're doing, whether it's a brass quintet or solo career, or I'm actually just now starting, I'm really excited about this, a new group with a composer / electric guitarist and a bass player that does like looping and effects through his bass. It's brand new, but we got a residency in the fall at Avalock, and we're going to be doing some performing up in the Northeast. It's going to be a really interesting and exciting collaboration. And I think more things like that need to be happening. I would love to see the trumpet. The thing we can do is have young, incredibly talented players like all of you guys out doing interesting, creative things. I think there's still viable work in the orchestras, like I said, but one of the things I see in instruments that don't have that option, like saxophone and like non-orchestral percussion, is these people are out always making cool stuff, and they're absolutely dedicated to what they're doing. They're playing they're finding a way to get their art form out. And they're fully invested in that. So instead of sitting in a room playing Petrushka, they are sitting there, talking to composers, collaborating, commissioning, booking things, putting together a website, an electronic press kit. They're doing all of these things to get themselves out there. There's nothing right or wrong about either one of these things. It is totally fine. It better be fine. I spent a lot of my life doing it, sitting in a practice room playing Petrushka. But there's nothing wrong with doing that. If what you want to do is play in an orchestra, go get it. But at the same time, I think we also need people, especially the people that are really gifted at it, to go out and do really interesting, creative things. And get them in front of an audience and create a place where the trumpet can exist within our culture. Not only exist, but thrive. So when somebody thinks of new chamber music, they think, oh, trumpet. And not everything but trumpet. One other answer, longest answer in history, right here, folks. Right? I was looking for an agent a few years ago, and I was recommended to this very good New York agent who was perfect for the kind of work that I wanted to do. And I sent him my materials, talked to him on the phone. He said, well, Craig, this looks fantastic, and you've got great materials. You're obviously a great player. He said, I think you've got everything together that you need. He said, the only problem is you play the trumpet. Okay, he said, and that's okay, fine. Maybe he doesn't like the trumpet. Maybe the trumpet isn't marketable. Okay, I disagree, but that's all right. Let's hear what else he said. The next thing he said to me was, if you played the piano or violin, sure. Cello, maybe. Anything else? What? You could be a string quartet too. I find that very challenging. I think that we need to beat that. We all do, not just trumpet players. That's unacceptable opinion in our world. That's an unacceptable thing for anyone in instrumental music to say, that there's 2.5 instruments that you could play and everything else you're just hopeless. We need to change that, and I'm working to do it. But honestly, it's going to be a long-term thing, and it's up to you guys. You're young. You've got your whole world in front of you. So even if you get that orchestra job, still do this on the side. Get your tenure, and then do cool stuff with your instrument. Get your tenure first. Other question? Yeah.
Someone posted that book on that for $40 on the website.
Yay! That's great. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that. I want my $110 back. No, honestly, it's well worth $150. But it's hard. It's hard when you're young and in school. Paul.
Craig, you've done a lot of your work with living composers and with making new music, but you've also spent a lot of time with transcriptions.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell everybody here about the unique opportunities between both, where they're similar?
Yeah. By the way, I brought a few CDs. I just have a few, but if anybody's interested, this was my big transcription project. Music of Brahms, Barber, Schumann, and Debussy. It came out a couple of years ago, and I think there are, speaking of trying to be creative, I think we need to play new music. One is commissioning things and discovering new works. And then the other prime thing is transcribing things. The Philip Glass I played was originally for saxophone. It's not really a transcription because I play the notes exactly the way they are on the page. I don't change anything except for I put the key in such a way so it fits on trumpet. But with the Brahms and Barber and such, all of those I changed the trumpet part, had to, so that it would be playable on the instrument. And there's a lot of great music out there that works well on the trumpet. To me, the cornerstones of that project are the Brahms and the Schumann. Thank you all, guys. Sorry I went over. The Brahms and the Schumann were both originally written for multiple instruments. The Brahms is the Opus 120 number 2 in E-flat major, originally for clarinet or viola and piano, and the Schumann Fantasy Stück L73 originally for violin. The Schumann created versions for violin, cello, clarinet, and maybe something else. So my idea was, well, if these guys had known a really good modern trumpet player, what would they have done? What would they have written? So I didn't, certainly not qualified to touch the piano part, but I just tried to take the trumpet part, or the, I like that, the solo part, and now a trumpet part, and try to figure out, okay, what is happening in the music, and what would Brahms or Schumann have done in this passage if he had known that it would be played on the trumpet? If it's sotto voce, but it comes in on a high C, well, that's a very different event on a clarinet. So maybe it's C and a staff instead. And I can do that sotto voce on trumpet. But the high C is not really sotto voce at any point. I mean, you can do it softly, but I've never really, and it's just, you hear the music and it's so sweet and delicate, so you put it in the right octave. But then you say, okay, but if I start it there, then I have to do I have to get back up into I have to do an octave transposition somewhere in the line. And where would Brahms have done that, in my humble opinion? So that's what that project was all about. So it's about creating new music for the instrument in an era where there's none, because as we all know, there's very little good romantic music for the trumpet. And so the idea was to find some really great, not just nice showpieces, but great masterworks, and to try to create good working versions of them, and make it and make it available for the instrument, and add to the repertoire that way, and add to our marketability that way. You're much more likely to sell Brahms and Schumann than you are Arbin and Clark, or Thorvald Hansen. And I love that piece, but not a whole lot of presenters are going to say, "Oh, you're going to program Hansen, fantastic." So finding a way to be musically substantive in this competitive world is a big part of this. So yes, I think transcription is a great opportunity for being creative, and it doesn't, we've had so much of it in the Baroque period on piccolo trumpet. That's great, but what about the Romantic? What about classical? There's some of that. Sergei Nakarikov has done some. What about 20th century stuff? There's plenty of stuff, and modern stuff. My Philip Glass is an example of that. I've got a whole CD of solo Philip Glass stuff coming out soon. I've just got the final edits to be done, and that is all stuff not written for trumpet. Like I said, no note is changed, so it's more a version than a transcription. But there's stuff out there to play, pieces for unspecified instruments. There's all kinds of things if you dig. So you have to think about what you want to play and how you want to, and then find a way. How is it going to work? Is it possible in the trumpet? Can I create some version for it, and do that? Lots of opportunity for creativity. Yeah.
I have a follow-up questions to Andy's question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you tell people like engineers why music matters and why they need to support the arts? Why do the arts, why do new music or Brahms matter to the everyday engineer?
Okay, who wants to take that question? Yeah, I mean, I think, one, people need to, I guess I'll stand up and you can actually see me. But, the reason I sit down, of course, is I don't necessarily feel like I'm an expert at this. But I do think that people need to, in order to be able to appreciate art in sound, right? This is an art form that is sound in time, an expression of ideas and emotions of sound in time. Well, if you're going to do that, they need to sit down and listen to it. Not put it on their little earbuds in their iPhone while they're, walking outside in the snow and 30-mile-an-hour wind and say, I don't know, I don't really get this music. And then they get a call and a text, and well, of course you don't get it. I mean, it actually takes attention. It takes dedication. It takes, just like when you go to an art gallery, I mean, you have to stop and look at the painting. And you can't just like cruise around, get some coffee, and then walk through and say, "Well, that place wasn't much." You've got to take the time, and you've got to be open to things that maybe aren't easy right off the bat. And one of the classical music's big challenges is it's a huge genre. You say classical music, and it's like, Ockeghem and Gesualdo and Stravinsky and John Adams and Milton Babbitt. These are all the same genre, yet rock and alternative rock are separate? Seriously? I mean, if somebody listens to a piece of classical music, whatever the heck that is, Lord knows if that's, it's like listening to country and say you don't like R&B. I mean, it's a kind of a different thing. Just because you heard Haydn doesn't mean you don't like classical music. If you'd heard Haydn and didn't like it, it doesn't mean you don't like classical music. So, try to introduce people that might be like this to a whole range of things. Like, well, why? If you don't like it, what do you not like? What have you heard? How much attention did you pay when you were listening to it? And go down that path and take the time and sit them down and put something on and sit in a chair, offer them a nice drink and listen. And don't do anything else. No smartphones and iPads, and just listen. And give it the time. And if the initial reaction is, wait. I don't know if any of you have done this. I've got Sirius XM on my car radio, and sometimes I'll put it on the Metropolitan Opera channel. That can be one of the most singular, jarring experiences. You're like cruising around in life, doing this and that. You get in the car and you turn it on. It's like, you're like, whoa! What's that? Turn that down! Someone's screaming at me. If that was what you think opera is, and I've had many times where my first reaction to that is, oh my God, that's. But then, of course, if you sit down and listen to an opera, not Sirius XM in your car on the way to pick up your kids from school, then you've got a totally different thing. So I think one of the problems is the way people consume it, and making sure people consume it in ways that are meaningful. I was going to say something else, but I don't know what it was. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Anything that's bothering you guys? Things that, like, what are your fears about your careers?
Failure.
Yeah. It's a perfect answer. Thank you. Fear of failure, I think, is like a plague in music schools. And so let's talk about it. And again, just tell me to shut up. I came here to spend time with you guys, and I wanted to have this discussion, so I'm going to take the time to do it as long as you're willing to talk. And when they kick us out of the room, then we can talk later tonight. So it's a plague. What are you afraid of?
I'm not too sad. I worked 2 years in my school as a computer programmer, just to make money so I can survive. And honestly, computer programmers don't worry about not having jobs because there are so many jobs out there. You can be as mediocre as you want and still make $75,000 a year as a computer programmer. The problem with trumpet playing is you can be the absolute best in your school, and that doesn't mean anything, because if the best in your school doesn't mean you're going to get a job.
Right.
Even good jobs pay half as much as like a bad job for some other career.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons I think a lot of times we're afraid of failure. And then we spend so much time studying something that ends up not being integral, I guess, for the rest of our life for some people.
Yeah.
I know people that don't do music anymore. So I think that's part of it, maybe.
Okay. I totally agree.
Or maybe we're afraid
So-
that we're going to dedicate our lives to something we end up hating. Because also I've heard that in the orchestral world there's a lot of people who are unhappy with their lives.
There are, but but there are a lot of people that are really happy too.
Yeah,
And a lot of that comes down to what you make of it.
yeah.
And I think expectations play into that. I wouldn't worry about that. If you get into an orchestra job and you're not happy, there will be other options. You'll find other options, or find a way to find happiness in that job. Win another job. If you get good enough to win one job in, say, a major orchestra, you will be able to win another one. My story. I struggled and struggled to win a job. I finally won. My first job was principal in Sacramento, and then 2 years later I went bankrupt, and then I struggled. My whole time, I'm like 5-year period, I'm trying to get a job in a major orchestra, and then finally I won the 4th job in Chicago, and then I won the next 4 auditions I took after that. And it was a kind of thing where I thought, well, God, if you ever win one of these, it'll be like, like you won the lottery, And no, it turns out it's a skill, and you just keep working, you put it together, and then when you know how to do it, you know how to do it. Now, I'm not saying if I went and took an audition, I'd win now, but if I took enough of them, I would. If I just got back on the circuit and just focused on doing that, for sure. And that's not unusual. That's not because I'm some wunderkind. No, Lord God, no. It comes by hook and by crook in my career. So it's just about putting together the pieces. And there's having some good fortune, things go your way. But I think if you put it together, you can do it. So I wouldn't worry about that. The other things you mentioned, though, actually I also wouldn't worry about, but that's much harder to see. Who's afraid of not making it? Be honest. Yeah. Good. I'm glad some of you didn't raise your hands. That's more than I could have done at your age. So, that's a big fear of not making it. And what I think you want to pay attention to is, what are the consequences? The consequences of not making it are never, in my experience, dire. I've got one very good friend who didn't make it, and quote unquote, because at some point he decided he didn't win. He went to Rice. He went to New World. Really more talented than I was. We were an all-state band together, and very talented. He did a bunch of freelancing in Houston with the symphony. He was teaching, and at some point he got into his maybe around 30, and he said, I think I need another direction. So he got into sales, and now he's a pharmaceutical salesman living in Jacksonville. He's got a gorgeous house, wonderful family, and he is very happy as can be. And he actually had a bunch of dental work done, and he sent me a picture not long ago of him at his new Trumpet sitting on a stand. He was just getting back to it and doing it because he wanted to. So that's one failure. Another failure is when I won the job in Sacramento Symphony. He could be listening. Hi, Rod, if you're listening. I bet he's not, but he could be. And the tuba player in the orchestra went to Juilliard. He got his master's at Juilliard. Won the job in Sacramento Symphony. Fantastic tuba player. Still one of the best tuba players I've ever played with. But he looked at the career and thought, gosh, there's just not much opportunity for an orchestral tuba player. It's so long between when jobs come out, and he just made the decision that he didn't want to live his life based on those odds. If Rod had kept playing tuba full time, he would have won a big job. No doubt in my mind. But he didn't like the odds, and so he moved down to the symphony, and the symphony was falling apart. He was on the orchestra committee, really active, and he saw the writing on the wall a year before it closed, and before any of the rest of us saw what was going on. And so he left. He went down to Los Angeles, where his wife at the time was. She was going to USC, violinist, and he got a job at a tech company, working, I think, quality assurance, and then moved up to customer support. He was making about the same money he made in the symphony in Sacramento, but working longer hours and a longer year. But he always had an interest in that, and he was able to get an entry-level job, and he put in the same dedication and focus to that he put into playing the tuba like a god, and he worked his butt off, and now he's like, I don't know, associate vice president of some data storage company in Silicon Valley, and I would be scared to guess how much money he is actually making. He's also got a beautiful family, incredibly happy, gorgeous house, and he also plays tuba in the Santa Rosa Symphony and teaches tuba part-time at San Jose State University, and is really happy. Another failure. So, if I could do one thing for you today, it would be to take that fear of failure away. You wouldn't be here having success at this level if you didn't have what it takes to be successful at anything you set your mind to. And there's a whole world of opportunity out there. And if at some point you decide that the trumpet or music is not where your focus should be, then shift it and apply yourself the same way like these two great friends of mine, and you will find success doing other things. There's all kinds of opportunity out there. So you don't need a safety net. It's already there. If you decide, it's not even a safety net, because you're not going to fall. You're going to get off. If that's the path you choose, you'll get off. And go on to something else, and you'll be successful at that. And as far as wasting your time, how many of you guys feel like you've wasted your time playing trumpet or the music up to this point in your life? Yeah. If tomorrow I went to work for my friend Rod, if he'd have me, and never played another note, never looked at another piece of music, I would be so grateful and thankful for all of the opportunities I've had in teaching and in playing and this whole life. It's an amazing way to spend a career. It's an amazing way to spend time, even if it ends up not being your career. So don't be afraid. There's nothing to fear. You'll find whatever way to be a success, whether it's in music, with a trumpet, or outside of music altogether. All right? On that note, let's wrap it up. Thanks, you guys.